In the string category, we have a bunch of data types. The most common ones are char and varchar. As I told you before, we use chars for storing fixed length strings like the abbreviation of states, and varchar for storing variable length strings like usernames, passwords, emails, addresses, and so on. Now, even though these are string types, we can also use them to store numeric values like zip codes and phone numbers, because we don't use these values in mathematical operations. Also, sometimes these values may contain a hyphen or parenthesis to group a few digits, and that's another reason that we should store these values as a string of characters. I personally like to use a standard length for most of my varchar columns. For example, I use 50 for short strings like usernames and passwords, and 255 for longer strings like addresses. This consistency simplifies the maintenance of your databases. You don't have to constantly check the lengths of each column. Now, the maximum length for varchar is just over 65,000. So if you store something that is longer, it will get truncated. To prevent that, you can use medium text, which allows you to store up to roughly 16 million characters. And this is good for storing JSON objects, CSV strings, and short to medium length books. We also have long text, which can store up to 4 gigabytes of textual data. And this is good for storing textbooks or years of log files. These are the main string data types that you'll be using most of the time. We also have tiny text, which can store up to 255 characters, and text, which can store up to 65,000 characters, just like varchar. But for this range of characters, it's better to use the varchar type because it can be indexed. We'll talk about indexes later in the course, but basically, we use indexes to speed up our queries. Also, all these types support international characters. English letters use 1 byte, European and Middle Eastern languages use 2 bytes, and Asian languages like Chinese and Japanese use 3 bytes. So if the type of a column is char of 10, MySQL will reserve 30 bytes for the values in that column. Next, we'll look at integer types.